Hello. Hi. How's it going? It's been a while since I uploaded anything to this channel. Good 7, 8 years or so, and all of that ended somewhat unceremoniously. So I guess I should account for that a little at the start of all this. So real quick, for anybody who remembers or cares, I'll just say I started this channel as I was beginning college, sort of becoming my own person, watching a lot of amazing movies for the first time. And at that point in my life, I had also recently come into a lot of free time. And as I got deeper into my education, that became less and less the case. I will also admit, just between you and me, that I think I had some growing to do as a person and some not so insignificant insecurities to overcome. And at a certain point, this stopped being what I wanted it to be. It became more of a source of stress than a source of joy. Not that this has ever been about, getting thousands of views or creating a serious revenue stream. It's about me, my journey through film, and sharing the ups and downs of that with people on the internet. In the years since, I have kept it in the back of my mind that I wanted to get back to something kind of like this. Again, it just never really felt right. I wasn't quite sure what format to take. I was, a little embarrassed that I had failed at my first go at it. But going into 2024, it kind of feels like the time. And I'm not making any promises here, but I want to give this another go. So to start all that off, I thought I would do a fun video for me and account for some of the stuff that I've seen recently. Specifically, I'm going to go through a sort of homework list of films that I made for myself last year. For the year of 2023, I made a list of 52 films, which I guess I'll put up here on screen in order of release. And the idea was that I would watch one of these films every week through the year of 2023. And in fact, I did that. And it ended up being an amazing exercise for me. It really cut down on the amount of time that I put in worrying and just freezing over the decision of what film to watch. It also got me to watch a lot of things that had been on my master list for years that I had been putting off or ignoring due to length or fear of subtitles. Great experience, and we're gonna get into some of these here, so be ready for that. I'm not gonna like super edit, chop up this video. The idea is just to ease myself back into this and sort of talk about the best stuff that I saw last year. Very little of which actually came out last year. My plan with this video is to do it almost gauntlet style. Not that I want to talk about every movie, but more so I mean like I'm gonna move through these pretty quick. Hopefully not spend too much time on any one film, except for maybe my very favorites. Within that, I do have some notes over here, some sort of subcategories that I've come up with to add a little bit of structure, but that's what we're doing. We're just kind of doing a little goof here. Before I talk about any of the movies, I actually did want to briefly go over some statistics I came up with that I think are kind of fun and just back up the fact that I think this was a really worthwhile exercise. So, of the 52 movies that I watched from this list, I ended up giving 14 of them 5 stars. Perfect scores. Which, to me, doesn't necessarily mean it is a movie without flaws. It just, to me, means that it is a movie that is overwhelmingly successful that I love. 14 of those, pretty fantastic, because I'm more generous than some, but I'm not handing them out like candy. In fact, 14 out of 52, that translates to about 27%. And even with those movies factoring into the greater figure, on Letterboxd, my overall percentage from all the movies that I've rated, I've given 12% the 5-star rating. So the fact that this list earned a rate more than double that is pretty fantastic. I gave 19 movies 4 stars, which to me means great movie. The jump from 4 to 5 more often than not is more of a like personal thing or like a minor gripe here or there. 16 got 3 stars, which I guess I'm kind of breaking down my methodology here. I'll try and be quick. Because some people, I understand, see, okay, 3 out of 5, 6 out of 10, 60%. That's like a failing grade. No. To me, 3 stars means I'm glad I watched this. I'm glad I spent my time with this film. I'm glad to have seen it. Which by extension means that there were only 3 movies from this entire list that I didn't feel at least that good about. Because there were 3 movies that I gave 2 stars, which means not for me. Not necessarily trash. It's not a 1-star movie, but not for me. We'll talk about those in just a second. Last year, I watched a total of 183 films, of which 123 were new to me. So this list is accounting for a little less than half of that, but looking at the numbers, this is where the best stuff came from, for the most part. I don't think I'm going to end up making a video about 2023 films released in 2023. I think that I am well past the boat to catch that wave of interest here as we're creeping into February. Plus, I watch a lot of older films. I caught about 20 2023 films, which has been my standard for the last few years. I will say this, my number 1 of 2023, Beau Is Afraid, was maybe the craziest experience, the most intense response that I had to any film that I saw last year. That movie is bananas. Just played me like a fiddle. Super, super fucking indulgent, but wild movie, dude. I loved that experience, especially I'd say the first half just really had me. So that's my pick for 2023. But the films, the actual films themselves. As I said, there were 3 movies that got the dreaded 2-star rating from me, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. I don't love roasting films. I like talking about movies that I like. I don't seek out movies that I think I'm going to hate. So I went into all 3 of these with the hope and expectation that I would like them or respond to some element in them, and in these 3 cases didn't really get there. So the first of these was Chuck Norris in Invasion USA, which maybe I should have seen this coming, but it felt kind of like I owed it to my 11-year-old self to see at least one Chuck Norris movie. And the funny thing here is that it's not bad in the ways I was expecting, and it's not good in the ways that I was expecting, because the action is, it kind of delivers. Like, shit blows up, it's convincing, like a million guns get fired. There's more scale to the action in this movie than I was expecting. What really drags is Chuck, who seems like a perfectly wonderful person, but as a screen presence is just nothing, man. I don't know. Again, I don't want to bag on it too hard, but I will not be rushing out to check out more of his features. I was also not a fan of the film Romy and Michele's High School Reunion. This was on my list as a major and unashamed Friends fan, and really ended up solidifying for me that the magic of that show exists in the combination and chemistry of those 6 actors playing those 6 characters. Most of them have had their moments outside of the show in various films, but I don't know, man. I think the humor here just wasn't really my style, and the soundtrack is weak. 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 But my very least favorite film on this entire list, the one that I was most tempted to give the dreaded 1-star rating to, was Robert Bresson's hasard, Balthazar. I'm not actually sure what the direct English translation on that is, but Balthazar is the name of a donkey. This movie is about a donkey who we experience the entire life of, which is largely full of pain and misery and confusion. And I did not find that exercise very productive. And I feel a little bad even just going that far because I have seen that this movie has meant a lot to a lot of people, but I found it very difficult and I did not feel rewarded for that experience in the slightest. There's a lot of ugliness in this movie. The donkey also goes through a fair bit of abuse, and some of that doesn't feel fake. Feels like to get the shot of the donkey being abused in the movie, they just abused the donkey. That didn't sit awesome with me either. I don't know. I've just had diminished returns with each Robert Bresson film that I've seen. This is the 4th of his films that I have given a go, and easily the least in my mind. The like flat affect that he has his actors deliver their lines with, just like really gutted this movie. I think it kind of worked in the likes of A Man Escaped or Pickpocket. Pickpocket being by far my favorite. The coldness reads a little better when you're dealing more with process and less with actual human feeling. Not for me. On the flip side, I'm just going to get this out of the way. I did a ranking of every movie that I watched for this list, and I think the top 3 deserve some special recognition. My number 3 pick would be Ingmar Bergman's Autumn Sonata, which I actually don't really feel that prepared to talk about because I found this just to be a tremendously overwhelming work of art. Some of the greatest acting I have ever seen in any film ever. And it's fucking Ingmar Bergman, so I mean, do I even need to speak on the direction, the cinematography? Fantastic. An upsetting film, for sure, but one that I am very excited to revisit. It has entered my collection, the greatest honor that a film can receive, surely. My number 2 pick is a little more personal, but that would be Na Hong Jin's The Wailing. Apologies if I mispronounced that name. This feels a little bit more like a personal pick in that it is playing with some of my personal favorite pet themes, but I really do think this is a tremendous film. The scope of it and just the overwhelming dread that it amounts to. I really, really responded to the fantasy elements in this, which I think are pitch perfect. And I'll just say, like, any literal representation of a demon, or better yet, Satan, in a film is like just my shit. You can play it funny, you can play it serious. It can be the most horrifying thing imaginable, or just like a lighthearted goof. I'm about all of it. This has that element is presented in a way that really did it for me. So I'm super excited to watch this movie again. It's around 3 hours, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I wanted to watch this film again the moment it ended. The Wailing. And my number one pick from this list, 52 movies, top of the heap, has got to be Orson Welles' Chimes at Midnight, which was kind of a layup, and I'll explain that before I talk about what really spoke to me about this film. It sort of had the benefit of me really getting into Orson Welles late into 2022, watching a bunch of his films then, and really coming to appreciate him as one of my favorite directors of all time. He has such command of his films. There's so much energy to what he's doing. And that's very, very present in Chimes at Midnight. I will say that I watched this in the same day that I also watched The Immortal Story. Not on this list, but another fantastic film. So I'll admit, kind of a tee up. Also, this is a Shakespearean film in its own way. It's kind of a riff, and I when I saw this had kind of reached the perfect moment to actually appreciate the Shakespearean elements in it. In that this would probably be the eighth or ninth exposure that I've had to Shakespearean dialogue, which is something that I really, really struggled with the first two or three times. It did take a bit of a journey for me to get to a place where I wasn't just like repulsed by the flowery talking that is kind of difficult for our modern brains to even process in the moment. Yeah, Joel Cohen's The Tragedy of Macbeth was another major stepping stone, and like a big prepper for me to enjoy this to the degree that I did. But I guess I should speak to the actual film itself, which tells the story of Falstaff, who, as I understand, is a character in a lot of Shakespeare's plays, but not necessarily the main character of any of them. It seems that Wells always had a very strong connection with this specific character and took elements from a bunch of those plays where he appears and sort of fashioned a story in which Falstaff is the main character. And there's more that you can read into there with his relationship with his father and the way that this movie resolves that I think is really powerful. But anyway, that's sort of what he's getting at. And then the movie itself is just incredible. It's astonishing what he could accomplish. The scale of what's going on here. There is a extended battle sequence in this movie that is using the same techniques that we use in the very best like battle epics of today. I was under the impression that Braveheart invented something that, you know, then you got the gladiators and your Lord of the Ringses and so on. This movie, what? 1966. It's in black and white. There aren't as many like post effects on it, but the techniques, the chaos of it, the way that it's photographed, it's all there. And it's exhilarating. The cinematography is astonishing. This is oh, I need to give it another watch before I can say for sure. It might be my favorite work from Wells. Although I'm a big trial guy too. All of his movies I low key love. And also the only one that I haven't seen is his film adaptation of Macbeth, which is of course now on my list for next year. Anyway, Chimes of Midnight. I do think that anyone going into this needs to have that expectation that the dialogue might be kind of challenging, might be one that you want to throw on subtitles for, even if you speak the language. But yeah, I think it's one that's really worth digging into, and that's been my experience as I've dug into the dialogue in various scenes here, that it has only revealed more layers and only made me love the movie more. Hair's kind of falling apart here. Well, we're having fun. A notable little subsection that emerged in this list that I was not aware of in making the list is Dennis Hopper, the actor. appears in 3 of the films that I watched. He is one that I have been a little aware of and not necessarily a fan of. I did also learn this year that he is the voice in the Gorillaz song Fire Coming Out of the Monkey's Head, which makes me appreciate him a great deal more. That is a fantastic song. But yeah, between these 3 films, those being Blue Velvet, True Romance, and of course, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, I think I have a better appreciation and understanding, at the very least, of what he could bring to a film. And sort of his, like, manic, like unhinged energy. I will say my favorite performance of the 3 is undoubtedly Blue Velvet, although my favorite movie would be True Romance, which I do think has some problems. I do think is very indulgent, but I had a lot of fun with that one. I think if you were going to have someone other than Tarantino direct a Tarantino script, Tony Scott, dude, yeah, perfect. Love it. I wish they could have collaborated more. Hell yeah. But yeah, as far as Dennis Hopper's performance, what he is doing in Blue Velvet is off the chain. Although I'm not sure that Lynch does the best job capturing that. And I know it's like sacrilegious to say anything negative about Blue Velvet. I think I get it. I'm not the biggest Lynch guy. I love Mulholland Drive. That's my one where I'm like, oh, well, he's clearly a genius. But to me, a lot of what he's doing in Blue Velvet, he would perfect in a film like Mulholland Drive. And again, particularly in regards to the Dennis Hopper performance, which I think is pretty fantastic. I'm not sure that his direction and cinematography is at the same level or necessarily elevating or presenting the work that Hopper is doing to the degree that I wanted it to. Also, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like I had some fun with it. That's a weird movie. I'm a massive fan of the first one, and they went in a totally different direction with the second that is just wacky and weird and not totally my thing, but I respect them taking a chance on it. I actually also watched, for this list, another notable horror sequel in Scream 2. Which was a little more my speed. I actually ended up watching the first 5 Scream films, of which I had only seen the first. I watched the first 5 Scream films with my girlfriend. That was a really exciting experience, and there's kind of enough formula there within the franchise to make that sort of exercise fun for 2 people. I highly recommend it. I think Scream 5 is fucking awful, but all of the Wes Cravens are a great deal of fun. Side note, while we're talking horror movie sequels, in 2023 I watched the first 8 Hellraiser movies, and I love that shit. I think that I have quite decidedly found my favorite horror movie franchise. Just the body horror, the themes. I'll probably end up making a video on that sometime in the future. But as far as horror movie sequels, that was definitely my most successful detour, like pursuit last year. Regarding horror movies, I did pick some winners in my 2023 list, including Cam, capital C-A-M, which I thought was a fantastic horror film. Really effective, creepy, and a movie that deals with like offline and online identity in the coolest way that I've ever seen. I think that's a common complaint among film fans, that like most auteurs, most great filmmakers aren't really making movies about our moment. And even though this Cam film is a few years old at this point, I think that it really is, and doing so in a super effective way. How to Blow Up a Pipeline is one of the director's follow-ups, and so now I'm super excited to check that out because I've heard good things. Takashi Miike's Audition Pretty wild movie. Pretty into that one. Heavy, gross, very gross. Effective movie though. I'd recommend it to certain people. David Bruckner's The Ritual is a movie I ended up liking a lot. Like significantly more than I was expecting to, and I had some expectations going into that one. Best creature monster design that I've seen in a horror movie in a very long time. These last two aren't really like overt horror movies, but I'm gonna rope them in here anyway. The Shallows, shark movie. I was a Shark Week kid. I think that sharks are the most terrifying creatures known to exist in this wide world, and it's a shame that there aren't more movies that really convey that menace. This movie is ridiculous, but I think it is extremely well done. I'm thinking on it, and like there are a few shark movies that I've yet to witness, but for my vote, it really is like Jaws and then The Shallows. I think this might be the second best shark movie ever made. I also watched Darren Aronofsky's Mother, which I can't say I love out and out, but if Beau Is Afraid was my favorite movie last year, I like. It's easy to see why I was into Mother for the most part. There's one scene that was too much for me, involving a newborn baby, and I think anybody who's seen the movie knows exactly what I'm talking about. Some notable first exposures to significant directors that I watched for this list include the film Yoyo by Pierre Etiax, which I loved so much it inspired me to buy this Criterion boxed set. Some fun homework for myself. I watched a few silent films actually. Metropolis was fantastic. Just the scale of it totally holds up. A movie that I would show to non-film fans, or well, no, to people who are skeptical of silent film. Metropolis, damn, that's you can't like that in Chaplin. Those are the gateways. But back to Yo-Yo. This is kind of a combo silent movie, not silent movie. But anyway, a lot of physical comedy. Yeah, if you're a fan of any of the great silent comedians, and I would include Tati in that, but we're talking Chaplin and Buster Keaton, Harry Lloyd. If you're into any of that, you gotta check out Pierre Etiax, and I think Yo-Yo's the place to start. Okay, watch this. Pretty proud of this one. For this list, I watched my first Pierre Etiax movie in Yo-Yo, and I watched my first Edward Yang movie in Yi Yi. How about that? Another great movie. I think that was my number 5 on my master rankings. Double check. Yep, put that at number 5. Yeah, this might be a perfect movie. This movie like got right in my heart and just got to business. Every serious film fan should see it. I also watched my first Ozu in late spring, which was a bit of a challenge for me, but I ultimately came around on it. And as I've sat with the film more, I'm more and more impressed with it to the point where I would like to see more Ozu films. Very subdued, very domestic, not the most dramatic film that I've ever seen, but it's kind of cool that such a honest and seemingly authentic portrait of just like everyday life at that period of time in that part of the world exists. Well, one of the more interesting and compelling avenues that this whole experience took me down. My number 4 was another first exposure in Bellatar's Werckmeister Harmonies, which I am so excited that Criterion is releasing a restoration of. I need that immediately. Fantastic, overwhelming film. Another one that, yeah, I don't really feel equipped to speak on. But I will say that the use of music in that film and the sound design was massively effective for me. Also, some of the most impressive cinematography in any of the films on this entire list. Breaking the Waves was my first Lars von Trier movie. I'm not sure that he's for me, but certainly an interesting film, also, and less suspicious than some of his other films are. I'm sure I'll get around to more Lars von Trier, but I'm not in a hurry about it. And then I also watched my first Chantal Akerman movie in Jeanne Dielman, which is a 3 hour plus movie about a woman mostly cleaning her apartment, and it is kind of amazing. It was the sight and sound thing that got me to like, okay, well, I gotta see this movie. The most recent sight and sound greatest movies of all time list, it ended up being number one, and that's such a like bizarre, out of left field pick that it got me to see this movie, and I'm really glad that I did. It's one that I could see multiple viewings, like revealing more about. But it's also the kind of thing that I'm never gonna just throw on casually. So it's one I kind of have a mental note to catch back up with in 5 or 6 years. Sort of in line with those last two, there were a number of like Euro art house films, new and old, that I caught up with as part of this list, including the last two films in the Three Color trilogy. And like, don't hate me, I think I'm a white guy, like obviously, but the Three Colors blue, Three Colors white, Three Colors red. To me, reading the temperature, it seems like white is the one that is most often discounted, but it ends up being this kind of like smaller scale, less. I guess it's not. It doesn't quite have like the emotional uppercut of the other two films, but it has more of like a crime, like a seedier element to it that really spoke to me. Great movie. All of them are great movies, of course, but yeah, White. A surprise, that one. Also watched La Ventura. Quite enjoyed that. That one I was kind of wondering about in the middle of the film, but ultimately where it got really worked for me. I also watched Michael Haneke's Caché, which I low-key hated. I think that I might have some fundamental disagreements about art with Haneke, but I can't deny that it's an interesting experiment, and that it certainly had me, and that it certainly had an effect on me, even if it wasn't a pleasant one, and it felt kind of like I'd been tricked by the movie, and that the movie was almost condemning me for having given it my time. It's kind of something that I felt with Funny Games, but I also think that Funny Games is a more effective experience and a more worthwhile film overall. I'm still processing Caché. Personal Shopper was my latest attempt to understand what the hell everyone is talking about with Kristen Stewart, who I admire for the direction that she's taken her career post Twilight. She seems to be like earnestly interested in the art form of film and working with cool directors and talents, and putting her weight behind some projects that might not get the funding they need or made at all without her support. So, but some of these subreddits I'm on, and these online spheres that I engage with, would have you believe that this is the great actor of our generation. And even after seeing Personal Shopper, I'm not sure I'm quite there. I'm not denying her talents. I thought she was fantastic in Spencer. I thought she should have been more seriously considered for the Oscar. That go around, yeah, it's just her status is so inflated, and for some reason, I don't know. Maybe one day it'll click. Along these lines, there were a few I'm just throwing into this catch-all, like artsier films that I watched for this list, including the film Primer, which is pretty cool. This is one that I wish that I had seen in college, because it's such a micro budget wonder. That I think it would have been a like a source of inspiration just to know that a movie this ambitious could get made for so little money. But yeah, kind of a wild movie, kind of mind bending, kind of impossible to track, but I'm not sure that I really minded. I also watched Anthony Hopkins in The Father, which ends up being a fairly experimental film, but a massively successful one, if you ask me. What it does with the playing of perspective and reintroducing information that is contradictory to what you heard previously in the interest of putting you in the space of a man who is struggling to track his own reality amounted to a pretty incredible experience for me. I also watched Andrei Tarkovsky's Mirror, which is another film that I don't pretend to understand anything about, but just letting it sort of wash over me, I was pretty impressed with the experience. And just to wrap this up, because I have a feeling that this video has gone on way longer than anyone is actually interested in, or that I intended getting into this whole mess, I'm just going to talk about a few more notable films that I feel must be mentioned, including John Cassavetes' Woman Under the Influence, which has some of the most incredible acting that I've ever seen, and was the like biggest like gripping my hair, like I can't believe what is happening on screen experience of the whole lot. I watched John Waters' Serial Mom. In 2022, I had caught up with some of his older films, and to me, Serial Mom is his whole thing perfected. I think that Serial Mom is perfect John Waters, and it has a little bit more of a sheen, which I could understand that feeling to some like a bit of a contradiction, like a bit of a cop-out, that a true John Waters experience like needs that seediness, like that like Polaroid, like homemade quality. But I thought Serial Mom was just an absolute hoot, hilarious film, and a lot easier to watch than his earlier work. And to wrap things up, Cool Hand Luke, not necessarily topping my list, but I will say the scene where he eats the eggs is certainly one of my favorite scenes from any of these movies that I watched last year. So for that scene alone, I think that everyone watching this video needs to check out Cool Hand Luke, before you kick the bucket. Give it a go. I think I'm going to cut myself off there. I wrote at least a little blurb about almost all of these on Letterboxd, so if you want to follow me there, you can get some additional commentary. I will also include in the description the Master 52 movie list, ranked, as well as my new 52 movie list for the year of 2024, which I have already started into, and that has brought my attention to some pretty cool movies already. Thank you for watching this video. Let me know in the comments thoughts on any of the movies discussed in this video, and I will see you again soon.